Hello BookTube, hello friends, welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and today, as I'm filming this, it is May 18th. It's a Saturday, but the majority of this video is my April wrap-up, which I filmed about 2 weeks ago. I'm just filming a new intro because all of the references in the video to today and now and all of that are actually 2 weeks ago. But I have finally finished editing the video, and I'm just going to put this new little intro at the beginning, and then also I'm going to include a little clip that I made also a few weeks ago telling you about a book I finished in March, but it was a gift from my sister, and now I have sent that book to her and she has received it, and I can now tell you about it without spoiling the gift for her. So let's go now to that clip and then on to my April wrap-up, which again, like I say, was filmed 2 weeks ago. Hi, it's me from back in the past, and I have a book I want to tell you about. I read it during February and March, and I wanted to give it to my sister for Mother's Day, and I didn't want her to see it before I actually mailed it to her. So I'm filming a little clip right now, which I will add to a future video, and that way you can see the devotional book that I read for the months of February and March. I really wanted to show you because it's so beautiful. I absolutely loved this book. The photography is amazing and the devotions are wonderful, and I just thought that overall this is a 5-star book. It is called My Mother's Quilts, Devotions of Love, Legacy, Family, and Faith by Ramona Richards. Ramona has a very good testimony, and she shares that throughout her devotionals. She also has a special needs daughter, which I can certainly identify with, and she inherited, I'm not even sure how many heirloom quilts from her mother. Some were her grandmother's, and there are stories about all of these quilts, and she ties the stories of the quilts into the devotionals. So I wanted to send this to my sister the minute I saw it because she's a quilter. She makes beautiful quilts, and I know that she will love having this book, and I wanted to read it first. So I spent the last couple of months reading it, and now I am going to send it to her. So by the time you see this clip, it will already be after Mother's Day, and she will have already received this book, and it'll be fine if she watches the video because it won't be a spoiler. There are quite a few quilts featured in the book. Some of them have full-page photographs, and then others are just shown in little squares throughout the devotionals, but each of the devotionals pertain to or relate back to a quilt, and it's just so beautiful. I just absolutely loved reading the book, and I enjoyed the photographs so much. So if you ever see one of these books at a book sale like I did, I encourage you to pick it up, and if you're not interested in quilts yourself, pass it on to someone who is, because I know that they will love it. This one I especially relate to because it is turtles, and I grew up on Slowpoke Ranch where our cattle brand was a turtle, and my dad's nickname was Slowpoke, and we relate everywhere we went. So I just wanted to share this with you real quick. I did finish this in the month of March. It was one of the 33 books that I finished during the month. I believe there's exactly 60 devotions in this book. So I read one a day unless I got behind and then had to catch up, and sometimes that happens. So now by the time you see this, it should be in my sister's hands, and I hope that she will enjoy it as much as I did. Hello BookTube, hello friends, welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and I'd like to tell you about what I read in the month of April. So I had a fantastic reading month. I finished a total of 35 books, and I have 3 other books that I carried over, well 4 if you count my devotional book, that I carried over from the month of April into May. I had really thought and hoped that I could get at least 2 of those finished as well, but it didn't happen. Anyway, 35 is a pretty respectable number. So I want to tell you about everything I read. Now I'm only going to say 1 or 2 words about each book because otherwise we'll be here for 2 hours, but I do have a separate video for the Amish books that I read. Sarah from Steeped in Books and I co-hosted the 2nd annual Amish in April readathon, and I finished a total of 8 Amish books. So I did a few updates during the week for that, and I have a separate wrap-up video for that readathon. So I'll sum everything up real quick before I give you 1 or 2 words about each book. So let me put on my reading glasses so I can read my notes. So for the 35 total books, 27 of those were audio, 8 of them were print, and then 3 of the print books were ebooks. Now, of the ebooks, one of those was a graphic novel, and one was a children's book, and then one was a book of essays. Then, including the children's book that was an ebook, I read a total of 3 children's books that would be considered elementary or younger. Then I read a total of 3 middle grade or YA books. Those were mysteries. And I read a total of 19 mysteries, and that number includes the YA mysteries, as well as one Nate the Great book that I read during the month. So then I read 5 romances and 8 Amish books. There were 2 other books that are classified mysteries, but really they were more adventure books as much as anything, and they also had romances. So I didn't include those books in any of these categories because they're really in a class unto themselves. So I'll tell you about those when we get to them. So I'm going to go in chronological order this time using the Goodreads app on my phone, which, as you know, if you've ever finished more than one book in any given day, sometimes they don't list them in the order that you put them in. I'm not sure what matrix they use to determine which should come first. But anyway, the first book I did finish at the beginning of the month was on my Kindle, and it is a book called We Are Not Friends by Kang, and the illustrator is Christopher Wyant. This is a super adorable, cute little book. Or as Allie, the hardback hoarder, would call it, it's stinking cute. And there's a whole series of these, and I don't even know how I ran across it. I think it came up as a suggestion on my Kindle, and I may have paid $1 for it, if even that. And I really want to read more of this series. They just look adorable. And this particular book was about a group of 3 friends who are playing together and then get in an argument. And then they are not friends. And it's their story of their journey through this argument, being friends and then not friends, and then deciding how they can resolve the argument. And it's just precious. So if you have an opportunity to read any of these books, then I definitely recommend it. I will definitely be looking at more from this series. So the next one I finished is A Dark and Stormy Murder by Julia Buckley. I listened to this on Hoopla Audio because of the ARC for book 4 in this series that was sent to me by Berkeley. And I've already talked a little bit about this series in my What's New from Berkeley video. So I will leave it at that and just tell you that I am really enjoying the whole series. The next book I read was for my mystery book club, Carl Hiaasen's Double Whammy. This is the first in the Skink series. A lot of foul language, but it's very light and it's very humorous. I will just call this quirky. Carl Hiaasen is hilarious. There is a lot of foul language in this book, but because it's so light, I can ignore a lot of it and still enjoy the story. The next one, however, was a little harder to stomach just because it's so dark. There's a lot of foul language, but it's just too gritty. The other one I could handle because it was so light. This series, I don't think I'm going to continue it. So sorry, Tim. I picked this up because Tim from World of Sleuths, who's one of the March Mystery Madness co-hosts, has been reading this series as a read-along on his Goodreads group. And I wanted to try to participate with at least one of his read-alongs. He's already on a book farther down in the series, but, you know, I like to start at the beginning. So the only audio version of this I was able to get was an abridged version, but it was enough for me to get a feel for the flavor of the book and the series, and I just think it's too dark and gritty for me. I can understand why some people enjoy it. It is a very compelling book, and I have seen the movie that's based on the second book, but I just don't think this is a series for me. It's just a little too dark for me. But the book is Along Came a Spider by James Patterson. It's the first in the Alex Cross series. The next book I listened to on audio on Hoopla. It is book 2 in the Bookmobile Cat Mystery series called Tailing a Tabby by Laurie Cass. My favorite thing about this series is the cat. He's awesome. Then I read a series of mysteries that I found on my Bookmobile. They're labeled as YA, but completely appropriate for a middle grade audience. I had read one during March Mystery Madness called The House by Raylan Drake, and during the month of April I read Behind the Screen by Israel Keats. This mystery had to do with internet safety and being smart about what you put on the internet and just cautioning kids about being safe about who they're talking to on the internet, and it's just a cautionary story about internet safety. I thought it was very good. And then I read one called Tracks by Vanessa Acton, and this is about two high school students who were very observant, and they would ride the bus to school and always pass a middle school student who was walking on the railroad tracks to get to school. And one day he wasn't there, and they started asking questions and discovered that he was in need of help. So that was also a very good story. And then the other one was called The Turnaround. This was a baseball mystery, and I thought it was very good. You don't really have to enjoy baseball to enjoy this book, but if you do enjoy baseball, then that's a bonus. Then the next book on audio I listened to was The Saturday Big Tent Wedding by Alexander McCall Smith. This is book 12 in the #1 Ladies Detective Agency series. My only disappointment about this book was that the wedding was just in the last chapter. I would have thought from the title that more of the book would have been about the actual wedding and its preparations. But even the wedding preparations were only mentioned here and there. There were other mysteries and other things that the characters were involved in, and it was still a great story. I just wanted to see a little bit more of the wedding. Another audiobook that I listened to was by Barbara Venkataraman, the 4th book in the Jamie Quinn mystery series called Engaged in Danger. I have spoken at length about the Jamie Quinn mystery series. It's about a lawyer, and she's a family lawyer who keeps getting drawn into criminal cases, and this was a very good book. I really enjoyed it. Thank you again to Barbara, the author, for providing that for me on Audible. And if you haven't checked out that series yet, what are you waiting for? I have been talking about this series for at least a couple of years now, and it's just really good. I think if you like cozy mystery series or you like legal mysteries, then you should definitely give these books a chance. Another cozy mystery that I listened to on Hoopla is Dead Men Don't Crochet. This is book 2 in the Crochet Mysteries by Betty Hechtman, and this is a lot of fun. Then I listened to the 4th book in the Mr. Monk series called Mr. Monk and the Two Assistants. This book was really cool because Sharona, who was Mr. Monk's nurse and assistant from season 1, comes back into the story in this book, and I thought it was great. I also listened to Second Watch by J.A. Jance. This is from the J.P. Beaumont series. I can't remember now what number. In this book, Beau is showing his age a little, and he's having knee replacement surgery. But it's such an interesting book because as he's waking up from knee replacement surgery, he starts dreaming. While he's sleeping and recovering from his knee replacement surgery, he starts having dreams about things in his past that are unresolved. And so it's almost kind of a prequel because we see Beau then go back and solve a cold case that has bothered him for many years, and it's really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The graphic novel that I read is called Book Love by Debbie Tung. This was so good. I first saw that this was recommended on my Kindle, and I downloaded a sample, and before I had a chance to purchase it, I saw that it was on ebook on Hoopla. So I checked it out and I finished it, and I absolutely loved it. Every book lover should read this book. It is adorable. It's true. It is so great. The next audiobook I listened to is Trinity Falls by Regina Hart. I didn't know until I got into this that this is an African-American author and the characters are African-American. That is great because I am severely lacking in diversity in some of my reading, and so I was very excited about that aspect. However, I wasn't a huge fan of the book. It is a romance, and I got it from the Audible Romance package because of Sarah's Audible Romance Challenge. This was actually a book that I had meant to read for March. One of the categories she picked out for March was sports, and I didn't get to it in March, so I was catching up, but there really wasn't a lot of sports in it either. The main character is a lawyer who has moved back to his small town, and his father has passed away, so in his mind he's thinking he's moving back to help take care of his mother. Well, his mother has embarked on a new career. She has a new boyfriend who happens to be the main character's coach, and that's really where the sports stops. Of course, our main character is a former high school football player, so other than those little references to sports, there's not any other sports in the book. It's basically a romance, which that in and of itself is fine, but what rubbed me the wrong way about this was that the main two love interests just went straight from, do I like him? I don't know, to jumping into bed. And then those scenes happened quite a few times. And then they were wondering why there wasn't more to their relationship than sex. Well, because they didn't start out with a foundation. They just jumped right into the physical stuff. And it just didn't make sense to me, because you guys know I'm a bit of a prude. I'm old-fashioned, and that activity is not something that I approve of anyway. But for it to happen so quickly, and then for them to actually say, you know, how do we know our relationship is more than just sex? I was like, well, duh. That's where you started, so that's what you've got. Anyway, they worked it all out and all of that, and it was a happy ending. But I wasn't a huge fan of this book, so I doubt I'll read any more in this series. But I was very excited to add a little more diversity into my reading month. One of the books that I carried over from March into April is Murder Under Blue Skies by Willard Scott. I had about half of this left to go when the month started, so I finished it. And then I did read the first half of book 2 in the Stanley Waters series by Willard Scott and Bill Kreider. I don't have it in here with me, but I got halfway through Murder in the Mist, which is also very good. The setting of the second book is a Civil War reenactment, which is pretty cool. But in this first book, our main character, Stanley Waters, is a former TV weatherman, and he's opening an inn in his small town, and someone is poisoned at his grand opening. So that's kind of where the series starts, and there's only 2 books in the series, so that's why I wanted to go ahead and jump into the second one and just check these off my list. This was a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying the second one as well. The only reason I didn't finish it was because I had to start my Amish books for the Amish in April readathon, and I just couldn't get it finished by the end of the month. One of the children's books that I read is Nate the Great and the Snowy Trail. This was very cute. It took place, obviously, in the snow. One of the things that I really love about several of the Nate the Great books are that it teaches you observation, and also there's bonus material with extra learning activities in the back. And I have a few others checked out now from the library, and I just read one of those on May 1st, and it doesn't have the bonus material, so I guess not all of them do. I think maybe that some of the Nate the Great books are written at a lower reading level, and maybe these that have the bonus materials are for a little bit older child. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't looked up the AR levels on these, but that's just my guess. But it's still a fantastic series, and I'm really enjoying them. Another audiobook I listened to is Latte Trouble, Book 3 in the Coffee House Mystery Series by Cleo Coyle. This was really good. The last time I was at our bookmobile, I saw this on the audiobook shelf. It's True Grit by Charles Portis. I had never read this, and I listened to it in my car, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I immediately checked out the John Wayne movie, which I realized I have seen before, but it's been a long time. So my husband and I sat down and watched about half of it, and then it was getting late, so we didn't finish it, and we still need to go back and watch the second half, and now it's due back at the library. So I don't know if I'll have time to get it finished today or not, but at some point I will finish watching this one, and then also the newer version. One thing that disappointed me a little bit about this movie is I felt like the actress playing the main character was too old, and I think in the newer version she's younger, which I think will make me happy. But of course John Wayne is amazing, and this was really fun to watch part of again. I did manage to stay up with Sarah's Audible Romance Challenge for this month. Her 2 categories for April were Celebrity and New Adult. So for the New Adult book, I read or listened to Snowed Over by Angie Stanton. Now, New Adult, in my mind, is just an age group. A lot of people think it has to mean a lot of adult content, but this book was labeled New Adult, and there was adult content that was alluded to, but not graphically happening in the story. It was a sweet story, and I really enjoyed it, about 2 college students who are thrown together for a road trip. We've seen that trope before, but I thought this one was well done, and I enjoyed it. And then for Celebrity, I listened to Seaside Haven, which was a very short book by Sandra Birch. There are 3 books in this series, or really what I think it is 3 parts to the story, because this first part was I think maybe 2 or 3 hours at the most, and it didn't really finish the story. So in my mind, I really only read the first part. So I will go ahead and listen to the other 2 parts, but for now, I met the challenge. The reason it fits into the celebrity category is because the main character is kind of a well-known rich playboy type who has inherited all of his father's wealth, and our main female character is managing one of the resorts owned by him, and he gets in an accident and he comes there to recuperate and to get himself together, and they end up falling in love, and it goes from there. So it's if that sounds like a spoiler, I didn't really tell you any more than what's in the description, but I will tell you that what's in the description is pretty much this whole story. That's why I think there's got to be more to it. So when and if I end up reading the rest of it, I'll kind of give you a series review at that point. Then I went ahead and picked up book 5 in the Mr. Monk series, Mr. Monk in Outer Space. Now, Mr. Monk doesn't actually go to outer space, but this book is about him going to a convention of a fandom of a science fiction TV series. So that's where the whole outer space thing comes in. His brother is a featured character in this story, and I thought it was very good. Now, my next 8 books are Amish books, but before I show you those, I will briefly tell you about the other books that I finished up after the Amish and April readathon. I listened to the prequel of the Harmony series by Jodie Thomas called A Place Called Harmony. This goes back to the 1800s, to the founding of Harmony and the people who founded the town. Those main 3 families still have descendants in the town of the contemporary series, and I thought it was really good. There is a little more violence in this book than the previous books. It's not completely clean. There's a little bit of steaminess, but overall, I still rated it 5 stars. I thought it was a very compelling story, and I really enjoyed reading about the founders of the families who are in the contemporary stories. And a cozy mystery that I started before Amish and April and then picked back up and finished on the last day of the month is Dying Wishes by Molly McRae. This is book 2 in the Haunted Yarn Shop series. Now, I don't usually go in for a lot of haunted paranormal stuff, but after reading the first book in this series, I knew that this is a series that I would continue because the ghost in this story is the best character. She's temperamental and emotional, hilarious, and she makes it worth reading these books. Our main character, Kath, inherited this yarn shop from either her aunt or her grandmother. I can't remember. But her grandmother was kind of well known as being a little bit eccentric. In fact, people refer to her as Crazy Ivy, and Kath gets slightly offended at that, but anyway, she's learning to brush it off. And I think we're going to find out that Ivy also knew about the ghost, whose name is Geneva, and had a little bit of paranormal stuff going on in her life as well. Through most of the first 2 books, Kath is looking for the journals that her benefactor left, and I won't tell you whether she finds them or not yet, but it so far is a very fun series. Now, the mystery itself is a little complicated. I had a hard time keeping track of all the characters. She does have a group of friends that work and come to the yarn shop, and they have started calling themselves the Posse, with Kath as their leader, and they are really getting into solving these murder mysteries. So it's a little bit lighthearted, even though we are talking about someone being murdered, but you know, that's the flavor of a cozy mystery. So you just take it for what it is and acknowledge that it's fiction. So anyway, I did enjoy this a lot and will definitely continue this series. And then the last book I finished is a book of essays by Barbara Venkataraman, who is the author of the Jamie Quinn Mystery Series. She told me about this book that she had on Kindle, and it was free at that time. I'm not sure if it still is, but you might want to check it out if you enjoy reading essays. These were just a really fun outlook on life and certain aspects of life. The one I identified with the most was something, I think it was called Out of Focus, or something about focus, and it talked about how you can easily flip from one thing to another without finishing any one thing, and you go around your house and you see this unfinished and that unfinished, and you go along and finally by the end of the day, your husband comes home and says, "What'd you do today?" "Oh, this and that." And it's hard to pinpoint exactly what you did do because you were constantly going around putting out fires. So that really was something that I can identify with completely. I did enjoy the whole book. It is a quick read, and I read about half of it, and then, as I've said before, I don't read on my Kindle a lot. So I read about half of it in one sitting, and then it was Amish in April, and so those last 2 days of the month, I kept trying to pick it back up. Finally, it was getting close to midnight. I was so sleepy. I sat down and I skimmed through the last few essays, enough that I kind of got the gist of what was going on, and then I came back the next day and actually read them more carefully. I do that sometimes. I wanted to be able to count this for the month of April, and so I did get through all of it, and I enjoyed them, but I wanted to do it justice, so that's why I went back and read the last few a little more slowly. So I would definitely recommend it, especially if it's still free. And even if it's not still free, I would still recommend it if you enjoy reading essays and a fun outlook on different aspects of life. So I hope you'll pick that up. Now, the two books I mentioned that were classified as mysteries but also had romance, that I really would classify them as more of an adventure and definitely inspirational. These are books from the Vintage National Park series. I learned about this series from Waterbrook Multnomah, which sent me an advanced reader copy of book 3. So I have listened now to books 1 and 2. And by the way, I've mentioned in another video that you don't need to read these books in order. They each take place in a different national park, and they have different characters. What ties them together is the fact that they are all set in a national park, and they're from the time frame of mid-20s to mid-1930s. I listened to the first one called Road to Paradise early in the month, and then at the end of the month I listened to Where the Fire Falls. This one takes place in Yosemite, and I absolutely loved it just as much as the first book, which takes place in Mount Rainier. And I'm really looking forward to the third book, so I will let you know more about this whole series later. Meanwhile, if you want to know a little bit more about the first book, I talked about it in my What's New from Waterbrook and Multnomah video. I had not read this one when I made that video, but I can honestly tell you I love them both. So if you enjoy inspirational or Christian fiction and the setting of vintage national parks sounds interesting to you, then I think you would really enjoy these books. So real quick, let me show you the Amish books that I read. I did listen to one on Audible that I don't have a physical copy of. In fact, I really shouldn't even count it as the 8th book. It was on the Audible Romance package. It was literally 38 minutes long. It was just a little short story. I did listen to it twice, if that makes any difference. But it was called Amish Beginnings by Stephanie Swift. And then I finished the Half-Stitched Amish Quilting Club by listening to Book 2, The Tattered Quilt, and Book 3, The Healing Quilt. These are by Wanda E. Brunstetter. All of these that I finished are on audio. I listened to The Forgotten Recipe by Amy Clipston. This is the first book in the Amish Heirloom series. And I listened to An Amish Gathering by Beth Wiseman, Kathleen Fuller, and Barbara Cameron. And An Amish Wedding by Beth Wiseman, Kathleen Fuller, and Kelly Long. So all of those were Amish romances, but I also listened to 2 Amish Cozy Mysteries from the Amish Quilt Shop Mystery Series by Isabella Allen. I listened to Book 2, Murder Simply Stitched, and Book 3, Murder Served Simply. So I did not finish The Christmas Remedy by Cindy Woodsmall and Erin Woodsmall, and I did not finish Murder in the Mist by Willard Scott. I also started a Corrie ten Boom inspirational book called Don't Wrestle, Just Nestle, and it's such a short book. I thought I would just breeze through it, but it's really meaty, it's very inspirational, it's very meaningful, and I read half of it, and I tried my little trick of skimming through the second half and saying that I finished it and then going back to finish it, you know, May 1st, but I decided I didn't want to do that with this book. I really do just want to take my time and read it because it's a beautiful book. So those books are sitting on the table by my reading chair right now. So at this point I've already shown you a picture of all of those. So that is everything that I read for the month of April, and I am super excited about it. The one thing I didn't do that I regret is that I focused so much on catching up with the mysteries that I didn't get read in March that I failed to read ahead on the books for my book clubs. So now I don't have any of my May book club books read, and so instead of reading only middle grade books for middle grade May, I'm stuck reading some book club books. And then also I have some review books, which I decided I would do. And so anyway, it'll all come out in the wash. I have already posted my May TBR, which includes my books for middle grade May. So if you haven't already taken a look at that, I hope you'll check it out. So let me know if you have read and or enjoyed any of these books that I read in April, or if you're interested in reading any of them, then we can chat about them later. So that's all I have for this video. I hope you're having a great day, read a good book, and God bless you.